Vinny, want to talk about the pressure, right? And pressure of playing, especially in an Ashes series. It's the biggest series of all. We all know that. We grow up wanting to play in an Ashes series, play for England, but if you could play one test match, it would be against Australia, right? So with that comes pressure. So how did you deal with pressure overall to start with?
I think that my first taste of Ashes cricket, I was young, I was 21, so I kind of approached it with a naivety about what I was walking into. People warned me before, having been there 4 years previously and been hammered in 2006 and 7. I had people warning me, telling me it was going to be tough. As soon as you walk off the plane, it's going to be horrible. We've seen that with Ben Stokes this week. He's already front page news in the West Australian. And you're kind of half prepared for it. But I got there just with this wide-eyed naivety of, I'm going to try and soak it all in. I kind of presumed at 21 years old that this wouldn't be my last bite of the cherry in terms of going on an Ashes tour. So I saw it as an opportunity to learn. And as it goes, they were the only test matches that I did play in Australia at 21 years old. But I think it served me relatively well to have no real preconceived ideas or baggage going into the first time that I went there. But it's certainly a different pressure. When you walk off that plane, you do feel it.
Do you know, exactly the same thing. I went to Australia. I played my own test series. I played 2 or 3 tests against South Africa. And then I went to Australia and I was exactly the same. Everybody told me about it, but I was sat in between Gooch and Gat on the flight, because there's 3 seats then, right? And I was sat in between them, Gooch, Gat and Gough, right? And then we got to Australia, they kept telling me all these stories, and I didn't believe it. We walked out there, and it is like, compared to everywhere else you go, the media, it's just like a scrum, isn't it? Just everybody's in your face, flashing lights, cameras, and you suddenly think, oh, this is all right, my first tour. You feel part of it. It actually doesn't really affect you when you first go, because you think, this is brilliant.
Yeah, I certainly, that first tour, one of the things that we made an effort to do was enjoy being there, because it is an amazing country, even though there's the pressure of the Ashes, and the public enjoy telling you that you're going to lose quite frequently whilst you're out there as well. But we and I made an effort to enjoy being in Australia, whereas I think when I went back subsequently, it was more of a, you're not to make any headlines, you're going to shield yourselves away and going to keep everyone out of the firing line in order to not create that external noise, which in turn created more external noise. So yeah, I think the way that we dealt with it in 2010-11 was definitely to embrace the country, embrace the challenge, and just approach it trying to push back against Australia. And we did it pretty well in 2010.
So for you and handling pressure, everybody handles it different, right? And we all have these psychologists tell us when you go into an Ashes series, any other series, control the controllable, flush the toilet. We had all that. For me, right, it confused me even more. I just like to do it myself. I'm quite simple in that way. I just like to just get out there, good or bad. I deal with it my way, you know. That's the way I did it. So for you, when did you handle pressure well as a cricketer? When did it work for you? Been under pressure and it worked for you and you were at your best and you were confident. How did it work for you?
I managed to sort of kind of turn those feelings into an excitement. So you're nervous, and you're nervous before every game of cricket that you play for England, or I certainly was. But when I was good, I managed to turn those nerves into an excitement to go out there and show off almost, and show what you can do. And at the end of my mark, I would just feel completely clear. My mind would be clear. And when I think back to the best spells that I bowled for England, and I reflect on them quite deeply and closely because I remember them so vividly in the book, it was just that absolute clarity of what I was trying to do. But I think on the flip side, when I handled it badly, which I also reflect on in the book, I allowed all sorts of external noise to enter my headspace when I was at the back of my mark, and I'd be having doubts about what I was trying to do. I wouldn't be fully committing to the motion of bowling, and that would kind of spiral to a point where that's when my worst spells in Test cricket were. So, yeah, trying to channel those emotions positively, and it's easier said than done, but it takes a fair amount of work to be able to flick those feelings in your mind to be positive things. But I was certainly a better bowler and I did that.
I've heard you talk about this before in interviews and obviously stuff in the book as well. But So for you, when you were at the top of the game, nothing really entered your mind. You just got to the end of your match, you turned around, you knew what you were going to do, you run in and buff, delivered, right? And you enjoyed it. It was a challenge. But then when it became difficult for you and there was more pressure in the game, there was so much noise going inside your head, you couldn't block out the external stuff, and you just couldn't then control where the ball was going, or your action was all wrong. And is that what you're trying? Is that
Yeah, I think
you're kind of saying?
Yeah, I think more the things that lead up to you being at that point. But certainly, yeah, when I think back on the best spells that I bowled, I would be stood at the end of my mark, and I'd have a general plan, but I would trust that what was going to come out of my hand was going to be too good for the person at the other end. And so you'd have like a general plan of wanting to be outside off or whatever it might be. But knowing that my natural attributes would be too good for the person at the other end, or believing that, was what allowed me to grow in confidence and completely focus on getting the person out at the other end. Whereas when I had my bad periods and changing my run up in 2012 was a trigger for me messing with my action, which then messed with my confidence, and that's when I really hit a deep spiral in 2014 when I got sent home from that Ashes tour for not really being in a state that I could play international cricket. All of my battles wouldn't be focused at the other end; they'd be focused inside my own head and questioning everything that I was doing.
When you look back now, it's because I think it's so important, because I went through where I had an injury to my left foot early on in my career, and people tried to change my action. And the way I brushed it, it was amazing, really. 95, I went there, and I remember this in a warm-up game. We're playing in Durban, and I were running in open-chested, and I've always been quite side-on, you know. I were open-chested, and ball were coming out 5 mile an hour slower. And Atherton, of all people, come up to me and said, "What the are you doing?" He said, "Just bin that and go back to doing what got you in the first place." And instantly, luckily, I was someone who could just switch off like that. I did. I went back. That's it. Side on action, you know. So, but I was trying to do something, just wasn't me whatsoever. And I would have kept doing it, but it needed one of my teammates to pick me up on it. And me for actually to listen to him and register it and just say, yeah, he's right. What am I doing? And I just changed. What you know now, what would you do differently?
Well, I'd never shorten my run up. I would never
Spot
have done that. And the reason I did it was because they changed the law for it, be it from when I was kneeing the stump for like a 3 or 4 month period. I'd knee the stump. And Graham Smith complained about it, and the umpires called it a dead ball in that game, and that set a precedent for it always to be a dead ball from that moment forward. Then the ICC changed the law for it to be a no ball. So, and when it's a no ball, there's consequences in white ball cricket. It's a free hit. The wicket that you take on that delivery doesn't count clearly. So I was kind of forced into a corner where I was looking for a short-term fix to a problem that I needed to iron out, but with no gap in the schedule. I didn't feel as though I could change my running style in a short enough amount of time. So I was looking, it was basically a plaster to stick over the problem to get me through another big series and then into an Ashes year. But that decision and shortening my run up made my arms short, made my delivery stride short, and all the gifts that I was given when I was born in terms of my height and my ability.
You were born in my height.
Yeah, exactly.
You were suddenly my height.
With no skill. But it was like it just messed with the fundamentals of my bowling action, and then it took me about 18 months to fully untangle the mess that I'd got myself into as a result of going to that short run up. So yeah, if I were to go back to one moment in time, it would be at the nets in Napier in New Zealand in 2013 when I tried this short run up for the first time. The following day I used it in an ODI, and I bowled like 95 miles an hour and got none for 30 in an ODI. So I believed that it was a good thing for me at the time. So then I continued to do it for about 6 months, and that 6 month period is what caused me a lot of pain through the rest of my career.
Have you? Look, I'm a massive golf fan. I know you are. I've seen you on the golf course a few times, but bump into you on all sorts of golf courses. But I think one of the things we see in golf and the mentality around change, You see so many, I mean, some of the best golfers that have ever lived, they get to where they win majors and they totally change their swing. And then they wonder why their game goes to pot for 2 or 3 years. And some never come back. Some never come back from it. Do you see that kind of, what happens in golf to what can happen in cricket?
Yeah, I think when you're playing at the very top of sport, and the best players that I think of, they're always looking to get better. And I think when you're there in that moment, every decision you make is trying to make you better, isn't it? I suppose if you're a golfer, you hit the ball 300 yards, you'd love to hit it 350 yards. So you change something that you believe is going to do that. I was forced to change my action because of kneeing the stump, but also for that period, I bowled as quick as I'd ever bowled in my career. I was consistently 93, 94 miles an hour. So I believed that by making that change, I was positively affecting my cricket without subconsciously realising it was messing with the fundamentals of what I was good at, which was using a long run up, the length of my arms, the length of my body in order to get the ball down there with pace and zip.
And do you think the Ashes series creates extra pressure anyway? And it probably wasn't, in hindsight, the best time to change it. If it would have been in a smaller tour, you might have had a little bit of leeway and a little bit like a, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It might not be as much pressure and the opposition won't have been as strong and you might have got away with it, and then you build confidence and think, actually, in the long term, it could have been better. But you'll never know that now.
No.
Because you immediately, when you went back, started untangling all the problems that had got inside your head and your action.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was a moment in time where Angus Fraser and Richard Johnson, who were director of cricket and bowling coach at Middlesex at the time, sat me down. It was like,
what have they done?
Yeah, it was like an intervention. They sat there and they said, what have you done? Like, this isn't you. This doesn't look like you bowling. And that was a real watershed moment for me. And that was just before the Ashes of 2013 at home, straight into an away series. It's where we had the back-to-back Ashes series, so 10 Ashes test matches in a row. And about a month before that first Ashes test, my brain was going 1,000 miles an hour because I've got two of the people that I trust the most and that are the closest to me telling me that what I am doing doesn't look like me. So then that just kicked off this like massive panic cycle of basically trying to make everything look above the surface calm, and that everything's in order, but underneath my legs were going bananas.
I can imagine. So because of your experience of that and the pressure that it put on you, and it wouldn't have been a comfortable place for you because obviously you created a lot of news from Australian media and English media. So you now looking at players, and because now you're in the media, you write, you've got books, you commentate on radio and TV, you have a big voice in the game now. Do you actually look at the team now that are going to be going over to Australia and think, right, what advice would you give to them in handling that pressure and handling some of the stories that are going to be written about their game?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most challenging bit on top of the cricket. The cricket is clearly a good standard. Australia are formidable at home. We've not won a test match there since 2011, which I think signifies the task ahead.
We're not very good, yeah.
Going out there. It's a really challenging place for English players to go and play. And I think that the press stuff on top of that does add a little bit to it. If I were to give advice, I'd say don't read the press. And I think that this team are very good at insulating themselves within their bubble and reinforcing the messages that they are trying to send. When I look back to 2013-14, we hid away, we were meek, we were timid, we got hammered. The same happened in 17-18. The COVID series, 21-22, the guys were forced to stay indoors and you just sit with your own thoughts the whole time. I see the guys now as going over there and pushing back against Australia, and I think that's what you have to do in order to win down there. You have to earn their respect by standing there and saying, I'm going nowhere, I'm here for 5 test matches, and you're not just going to push me over and walk all over me. And I don't think Stokes and McCullum will let that mindset come into their team, so all of that external noise will just bounce back. And they have a great opportunity to turn the tide the other way, to start making the questions be asked towards the Australian team as opposed to themselves, and that's when you're really on top.
So what you're saying is that you would have liked to have played in this culture that the current England team have got. I definitely would have. I think I played in an era, Finney, where we didn't know whether we was playing one test match to the next. They reacted to the media. We had 3 selectors and we had great players. I mean, luckily, I think I would only drop once, and that was at the end of my career when I had 1 leg, right? But I think some players like a Butcher, Rampakash, Hick, I mean, they were in and out. Caddick got 100 wickets and didn't get picked for the Ashes. You know, in one tour, he didn't get picked.
Yeah.
And me and him were a great partnership, and they didn't pick him for the Ashes. So I think what we both agreeing on is that we'd have liked to have played in this kind of culture this England team have got now, and the way they go about things, and the continuity of central contracts and selection.
Yeah, I look at and I think about my best spells that I bowled, or the best games that I had, and we talked about it earlier, touched on it, the clearness of mind when I stood at the back of my mark without the external noise, without pressure of selection, thinking if I don't go under 3 and over, I'm dropped for the next game.
Absolutely.
I think it flicks your mindset into thinking how you can positively affect situations. And I think that the way that they pick the team and the way that they encourage their players and the mindset that they want their players to find, I probably would have found that clearness of thought at the end of my mark more frequently than I did in my career. But I would also caveat that with saying that I was very lucky to play in a really good England team. I was very young in it, but I played in a team that was full of 10 like established, excellent players. Would I change a few more test matches and a few more wickets for not winning the 3 Ashes series that I did, or not winning away in India and South Africa? That's the hardest question that I get asked, because I feel like I'm contradicting myself in saying that I would have taken more wickets, maybe, under this current regime, or would have been able to play like myself more often in this current regime. But it would be difficult to swap the wins for that, I think.
I agree with you. I think having experienced and seen players within my team, I know if they played in this modern day game, would average so much better because of the environment they would be in. People like Hick and Rambakash, who I think are a generation player, I think they were brilliant. And both of them, when you look at their record, underachieved on paper, but they were so much better than that. They were unreal players. And I think if they played now, they would both average late 40s, 50.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people that probably look on this era with envy now, especially from around when you played, and think I would have loved to have been backed and trusted, and to the team not be selected with what way the wind was blowing. Yeah, and I think that's something that these guys should be commended for. I think they cop a lot of stick for stuff unnecessarily, actually, because of what they're trying to do. But I think if you've played and you understand how difficult international cricket is anyway, without then heaping more pressure on top of your players, all I see when these guys are doing what they do is that they're trying to alleviate all of that external pressure so that people can just focus on being the best versions of themselves when they play cricket.